let's dive into one of early Christianity's biggest and maybe most important mysteries. We're talking about a lost gospel, a seriously powerful woman, and, well, a deliberate act of historical sabotage. And this isn't just some dusty old story. It's about a narrative that was intentionally shattered, and it makes you wonder, what did we all lose when it was broken? So, let me ask you this right up front. What if the single most influential woman in all of Christianity was just deleted from the story? I mean, on purpose. And look, this isn't just some hypothetical question. It's the real driving mystery behind an ancient text that was found again after centuries, the Gospel of Mary. And it suggests that the version of Christianity most of us know, well, it might be missing a huge piece of the puzzle.
The best way to think about this is like an unfinished loop, you know? It's a story that was intentionally left hanging, a text that was literally shattered into pieces. And for nearly 2,000 years, that's created this massive question mark. The missing parts aren't just an accident. Their absence is actually a key part of the story we're going to unravel. Now, just to be clear, this isn't some modern fan fiction. The Gospel of Mary is a real historical document, first found back in 1896. And get this, we have Greek fragments that date all the way back to the 3rd century. That means it was floating around at the exact same time as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So this wasn't some fringe text hiding in a corner, no way. It was a serious contender, a real player in the race to define what Christianity was going to be.
So right away, the text just hits you with its power. Picture the scene. Jesus is gone. The male disciples? They are an absolute mess, grieving, confused, totally lost. And then what happens? Mary Magdalene stands up. She doesn't just offer a shoulder to cry on, she takes command. She's the one who rallies everyone, the one who turns their hearts back toward their purpose. Right from the jump, her spiritual authority is just undeniable. Okay, so what was it that made a gospel with such a strong female leader so dangerous? Well, believe it or not, it wasn't just about her being a woman. It was about the radical, game-changing ideas she was teaching, a totally different way of looking at reality, salvation, everything. At the heart of it is this Gnostic idea, 8 equals 0. Sounds weird, right? But here's what it means. The 8 represents the material world, all its complexity, all the stuff we see and touch. The 0 is the spiritual source, the void. The idea is that this physical world is just temporary. The real goal isn't to resurrect your body, it's for your spirit to go back to where it came from. Now, you can imagine, for an early church building its entire foundation on the promise of a literal, physical resurrection, this was a huge threat. And Mary actually lays out the roadmap for how you make that spiritual journey back. It's not about church rituals or sacraments. Nope. It's an internal climb, a journey, where your soul has to overcome these 7 psychological roadblocks. Things like desire, ignorance, ego. In other words, salvation wasn't something a priest gave you. It was something you had to achieve yourself, through deep inner work. I mean, can you just imagine how that idea went over with a new organization trying to build a top-down hierarchy? Not well. Not well at all. So, this radical idea of individual spiritual power, it leads directly to the gospel's most dramatic, most explosive moment. This is the showdown that basically sealed its fate.
And boom, there it is. Mary shares this incredible private teaching she received from Jesus. And Peter just erupts. His response is instant and it's hostile. He's not just questioning what she heard, he's questioning her. His words are just dripping with jealousy, this raw feeling of how dare she. It's a flat-out rejection of the very idea that Jesus would prefer her, a woman, for his most secret teachings. You have to understand, this wasn't just a simple argument. This was a battle for the very soul of Christianity. It was a fork in the road. Down one path, you have Peter's vision, institutional order, a clear hierarchy, and a line of succession that's public and male only. But down the other path, you have Mary's model, charismatic revelation, private visionary knowledge, and authority that comes from within, not from your title or your gender. 2 completely different futures for the faith. And it gets even more intense. The text shows another apostle, Levi, actually jumping in to defend Mary. He calls Peter a hot-tempered man and accuses him of acting like an enemy. Now, just stop and think about that for a second. If you're trying to build a massive, enduring church on the idea that Peter is the rock, well, a gospel that shows him being jealous, wrong, and getting called out by his buddies, that's not just a problem. It's a foundational crisis. That book has got to go. But here's the twist.
The church couldn't just delete Mary Magdalene entirely. I mean, she was way too important in the Gospels they did approve. So they pivoted to a different strategy. It's like if you can't erase them, you rewrite their story. And this kicked off a deliberate 1,400-year character assassination campaign.
And the key moment, the absolute turning point, happens in the year 591. Pope Gregory the Great steps up and gives a sermon. Just one sermon, but it was a sermon that would echo for centuries and completely change how the world, especially the average Catholic, saw Mary Magdalene forever.
So how did he pull it off? It was, you have to admit, a brilliant and devastatingly effective move. Pope Gregory took 3 completely separate women from the Bible, Mary Magdalene, Mary of Bethany, and that unnamed sinful woman, and he smashed them together into one person. And just like that, in a single sermon, Mary Magdalene, the apostle to the apostles, was gone. In her place stood this new creation, the repentant prostitute. Her leadership was erased, replaced by a much more manageable story of sin and forgiveness.
And this timeline just shows you how incredibly successful that rebranding was. We're talking about 1,400 years. For 14 centuries, that's how your average churchgoer knew her, not as the courageous first witness to the resurrection, but as the redeemed sinner. The Vatican, they didn't officially walk this back until 1969. 1969. By then, the story was set in stone for generations. The damage was done.
Which brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why go to all this trouble? Why suppress a gospel, assassinate a character, and maintain the story for over a millennium? Well, the answer gets to the very heart of what was at stake.
Ultimately, it was all about control. It was about taming what some of these Gnostic texts called mein Drache, my dragon. Think of it as this raw, creative, wild, feminine spiritual energy, the kind Mary represented. Her whole model was about a direct, personal, unfiltered connection to God. And that was poison to an institution that was trying to position itself as the one and only gatekeeper, the only way to get to the divine.
See, at the end of her gospel, Mary tells the disciples they need to put on the perfect human. And for Gnostics, that had nothing to do with biological gender. It meant becoming spiritually whole. It meant finding a synthesis, a balance, between the rational, quote-unquote, masculine mind and the visionary, feminine soul. The institutional church rejected that completely. For them, it wasn't about inner balance. It was about an external hierarchy, one based very much on biology.
And that leaves us right here with this one last kind of haunting question. Because suppressing Mary's gospel, it wasn't just about burying one book. It was about silencing an entire way of seeing the world, an entire half of the spiritual equation. So if becoming a perfect human, a whole person, really does mean finding that synthesis, what have we all lost by only hearing one side of the story for 2,000 years? What's still waiting for us inside that unfinished loop? And what could happen if we finally tried to complete it,